When I first stumbled upon the store page of this game called Vampire Survivors, I have to admit I didn't really give it any thought at all. Graphics looked very low quality, and it seemed like any generic horde-slaying roguelite out there. Even the name sounded super generic. My first gut reaction was to think this is an asset flip. Early access on top of that, it was just so many red flags for me that I closed the page almost immediately. I wouldn't even have downloaded it if it was for free, to be honest. But Steam was relentless and pushed this game on me again and again. The third time, however, I saw the store page, something caught my eye. 99% positive with how many reviews? Okay, I had to give it a try. And how do you keep people entertained with something that in the end boils down to just walking? Well, let's just find out together. I know the price point certainly plays a huge role in this game's success. I'll not get into the marketing of this game in this video though. It'll be long enough as it is. If you are interested in a marketing breakdown, let me know in the comments. Leave a like as well while you're down there. It helps a lot, thanks. Now if you don't know the game, let me quickly explain how it works. One thing you will notice right away when you start the game for the first time are the controls, or the lack thereof. There's literally nothing you can do besides move the character up, down, left and right. No attack button, no dashing or anything. All of your abilities are on an automatic timer and get triggered based on your cooldown stat. The game spawns endless hordes of mostly the same 2 or 3 monsters over and over again. You defeat them with your automatic abilities and then collect little gemstones that give you experience and level you up. Upon each level up you can select from up to 4 different abilities or items. Which things that are depends on your luck stat as well as which items you have unlocked so far. You unlock items with achievements, like surviving a specified amount of time and other things. Same goes for the survivors that you can choose from. You also collect coins that you can keep even if you die. With those you unlock discovered characters and permanent power-ups. From time to time the game switches out the monster types it spawns, and even spawns in a boss or elite enemy every so often. There's some more unique events like little flybys of bats or special waves that try to circle you in with plants, but usually the enemies do not vary much. Now everything I mentioned so far is very basic. Remember when I said at the start that the game looks very generic? Any game developer with some experience can recreate those mechanics in a few days tops. But what really stands out here is the actual design and balancing that went into it, which is not as easily done. And I'll go as far as to say that they have been created by someone with either fundamental experience in game design or through a lot of trial and error and playtesting. Let's start with the abilities. Like I already mentioned, they are on a fixed timer, but not only that. Most abilities have a fixed or random direction as well, that you cannot control directly. For example, the first ability you have, the whip, will attack in the horizontal direction you're currently facing, but will not damage enemies above or below you. This design philosophy is seen throughout basically all of the abilities you'll find in the game. They're restricted or limited in some shape or form. Picking new abilities from leveling up or opening chests will then make it possible to pick the next abilities to either fill weaknesses in your offense or defense, or double down on what you already have to, at some point, receive the upgraded version of your favorite item. So basically, you as a player will have to time your movement with your available attacks to get through the hordes without being touched. On the topic of touching, one thing that stood out to me was the fact that almost all enemies are slower than the player, and their only form of offense is directly touching the player. At first it seems very easy to outmaneuver them, and a lot of times you can do that. Of course, there's the big problem of them spawning endlessly on all sides, but there's more behind this little fact than meets the eye. More on that later. One thing done really well with the abilities in this game is the feedback to the player. Every single hit you do rewards you with a little sound as well as the flashing effect on the enemy that you hit. Those little dopamine hits for your brain are very subtle, but tell your subconscious, hey, well done, keep going. And that's what you do. But to keep going there needs to be a goal, of course. This game being a roguelike, or having roguelite elements in unlocking stuff after the end of your run is a good reason for a lot of people to keep going. To unlock the next item or character, or to see the variety this game has to offer. Also, you might just keep playing to try hitting that ultimate power level, finding a new item combination or simply finding out what the enemy is at the end of the level. Speaking of enemies, of course for a compelling game design you need not only abilities but also fitting enemies. Most enemies in this game are very basic however. They will only damage you when you actually touch them, and they are mostly distinguished by how much damage they take, their movement speed, and how the graphic looks. And even though this is all as basic as it gets, it is really addicting. But how is that? What this game does exceptionally well is keeping the power progression just in a perfect, balanced tug-of-war. You need to stay ahead of the difficulty curve or you lose the game. But even if you get ahead, the enemy's scaling in power will keep you on your toes. The game rarely lets you play out your power fantasy for long, and that's very important. One aspect I touched on earlier, enemies being generally slow and avoidable for the most part, is a trick. Avoiding enemies too much can actually result in your personal death spiral. Once you get too weak to kill enemies quickly enough, they not only scale faster than you, but running away from them makes it so the enemies you already weaken get protected by new spawns. This also makes it hard to kill bosses or elites, which are slower and will be protected by faster small enemies and keep you from getting big rewards. On top of all that, it also prevents you from picking up experience gems. Those gems also play a huge role in rewarding and punishing the player. On one hand, they give you a second wave of satisfaction when you just killed a bunch of enemies and can now collect all the gems they left behind. On the other hand, this means simply killing enemies is not enough. Even though it feels rewarding in itself, you also need to walk to the spot where they died to receive any tangible in-game reward at all. Falling behind in the scaling curve might get you into a position where you can barely kill enemies, and on top of that you can't even reach the dropped gems if you manage to daunt some. To the rescue comes good old luck. Throughout the level there's power-ups, usually hidden indestructible objects, that can give you a little push to survive maybe just one more minute. A good design choice to keep players from ever feeling hopeless, because the next breathing room might just be in that next brazier. There are some very nice details about this game's design choices that are easy to miss, so I've collected some of those that I've noticed while playing. There's a very unique exploding ghost on the second level, which is actually indirectly introduced to you every time you start that level, as to not catch you off guard in the middle, which could be very frustrating. As it is in a lot of games, dying is a bit harder than you'd think. Very often you'll actually survive with what looks like 0 health. I'm confident there's some type of system in place that keeps you alive at 1 HP for one more hit. Temporary power boosts that you can collect by destroying braziers and search in the world will be better if you're behind in the power curve, at least that's what I experienced. So let's sum up what we learned about this game's design and what stands out. Maybe there's something here that you have seen in other games or that you want to implement in your own. Let's get to our summary. The game limits your abilities deliberately and in unique ways to distinguish them and never give you too much freedom. It also makes you think about filling gaps in your build. Abilities can be mixed and matched, upgrades and sort of combinations can be unlocked to keep the game fresh and interesting. Great visual and auditory feedback for the player for every hit on enemies, and then again on picking up rewards, keeps the dopamine flowing. Achievements and unlocks throughout will make you want to try again with more power than before. The power curve is just very well balanced, like a carrot on a stick dangling in front of you the whole time. Always be just a little bit behind or ahead of the curve, making you either greedy for more kills or scramble to get the next power up to maybe turn it around. It's a well-made tug-of-war or carrot on a stick, whatever metaphor you prefer. Advanced game design principles like introducing enemies with unexpected behaviors early and helping the player if they fall behind help make the game less frustrating without making it feel patronizing. Simple to control, easily accessible for almost anyone, removing of the attack button, which would just be pressed the entire time, is a good move and doesn't take away from the experience. Short round lengths, which are great for quick plays. This game's success is definitely proof that you don't need super complex and hard to implement mechanics or visuals to create a successful game, as long as the mechanics you do implement are deep and interesting enough. While there's a point about this game being very cheap and so easier to sell, it also shows that there's a market for small and simple games that are usually reserved for mobile devices. If I missed anything or got anything wrong, please feel free to tell me in the comments. And that's it for this video. I hope this was useful to you. I plan to do more like those in the future, and I already have another one in the works. So if you like this type of content, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and until next time.